Welcome back to the Flying with the Flock podcast, best place to get all of your Eagles and other NFL related news. I'm your host, Matt, and welcome to another week, another insane week of the NFL season that we just made it through. There are a couple different stories that I want to touch on. Obviously, we're going to talk about that crazy Eagles game. There's a couple different smaller stories that I'm going to touch on. I'm going to give you who my top three teams are at this point in the season. And I'll tell you why, obviously. And then we'll go from there. We'll go into this past weekend's games. And we'll also go into this upcoming week's games and who I think will win and lose. But before we jump into all of that mess, if y'all could leave a like and subscribe down below, that would be much appreciated. Follow us on our social media platforms for any updates that you may need when it comes to getting access to this podcast. But without a further ado, let's jump right into it. Alright, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, that being the Eagles and their offensive play in the first half of this past weekend's game. The Eagles beat the Los Angeles Rams 33-26. Just looking at the raw stat line, Jalen Hurts went 21 of 32, 226 yards, and 3 touchdowns through the air. Told you it would be a big day. Rushing, their top rusher was Saquon. He had 18 carries for 46 yards. Jalen Hurts had 9 carries for 40 yards and a touchdown. Their top receiver, who I said was going to go off, he only just got to wait a little bit for it, was A.J. Brown, who had 6 receptions for 109 yards and 1 touchdown. Devontae Smith right behind him with 8 receptions for 60 yards and 1 touchdown. Dallas Goedert behind him with 1 reception for 33 yards and a touchdown. And Saquon Barkley was the next closest with 4 receptions for 9 yards, though most of those were just check down passes in the first half. Defensive-wise, obviously there's going to be one player that we're going to talk about once we get to the overall game as I break it down. Very big game for defensive tackle Jordan Davis. Just outright, he had 4 tackles, 5 hold tackles if you're counting assists, 1 sack. I think 2 of those tackles that he had were like TFLs, and obviously 2, or at least 1 block kick. The other one might be Jalen Carter's. Otherwise, other defensive standouts was Zach Bond. He got this party started early. He showed up like an hour or 2 before the rest of the Eagles did. He had 7 total tackles, with 3 being solo tackles and 1 interception. And Jalen Carter, although it doesn't pop out on the stat sheet, he had a pretty significant game. He had 3 total tackles, all 3 of those being assists. But most of the time he was applying significant pressure to Stafford and making him throw like check down passes to like Puka Nacua, rather than opening up the offense and throwing it deep. He was also pretty significant in the run game, similar to Jordan Davis. These two are finding their rhythm now together. Now that they've played 2 full games together, now that they're finding their how they're going to play off of one another as the season continues to evolve. Alright, so we'll get back to the Eagles in a second here. Looking at just the raw stats quickly of the Rams, Matthew Stafford went 19 of 33, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception on the day. Their top rusher was Kyren Williams, who had 20 carries for 94 yards. Behind him was Blake Corum with 8 carries for 53 yards. Receiving, their top receiver was obviously Puka Nacua, who continues to get like 11 to 12 receptions or targets a game. Puka Nacua had 11 receptions for 112 yards, no touchdowns though. Devontae Adams had 3 receptions for 56 yards and 1 touchdown. And Kyren Williams had 2 receptions for 18 yards and 1 touchdown. Defensively, they were able to sack Hurts, it looks like, 4 times, so they were able to constantly apply pressure, especially early on in the first half. They were not able to force any turnovers, though. And ultimately, that's where we're going to get into the game here. Overall, the Eagles, it was a solid second half performance. I was expecting an explosive passing performance within the next week or two. It was just nice to see it this week. And I was texting with my buddy during the game here, and he even said that the offense was looking like a high school style offense. And that's being generous. In the first half, the offense looked like a pee-wee football style offense, where Kevin Patullo was running halfback dive for 3 straight downs and going 3 and out, not trusting Hurts to throw the ball north to south. Rather, he's throwing it like screen passes, and they're getting stuffed. This has been a theme that we've seen over the past 2 weeks, and it's been nice to see that be kind of rewritten, especially in the second half. I'm feeling that Sirianni and Hurts both sat down with Patullo during the halftime and kind of just said, if you don't start passing north to south here, we are. And although Sirianni said that Patullo still called all the second half plays on offense, I still believe Jalen probably checked to some better plays at the line of scrimmage, especially once he saw what the defense was lining up in. And ultimately, Jalen Hurts found a way to win again. He continues to do it. We saw it week 1, he found a way to win. We saw it not as much during week 2. I would say the defense more found a way to win during week 2, but definitely this week he found a way to win, and this time it was with his arm. The defense, there are still some concerns even after all the positives. There were some plays where you couldn't do much. The refs should have called OPI on the one Davante Adams touchdown. He clearly pushed off of Reed Blankenship, but then the Eagles got a similar no call later on a A.J. Brown touchdown. So I can't really sit here and complain about the no calls, especially if it's going even. And eventually, if we win, I definitely won't care. Realistically, I'm slightly concerned about the run defense. There were times where it looked good. On the 4th down and 2, when McVay chose to run it up the gut with Kyron Williams only being up 1 score, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis both got into the backfield and stuffed the run. It was more Jordan Davis than anything, who had a stellar game. But, yes, it's hard to say, oh, I want my defense to be 110% right now, because that's just not how it was last year either. It wasn't until the Baltimore Ravens game of last year that I was really like, okay, this defense can ball out, especially against good teams. So I still feel like there are going to be moments where this defense doesn't seem like it's going to be up to snuff, and that it could fail the offense when it matters most later down in the season, especially on a postseason run. But it's hard to say that from where we're sitting at as of right now. On top of that, the offense, we have to play full offense all 4 quarters. We can't be throwing east to west. We have to throw north to south. We can't be running east to west. We have to be running north to south. Saquon looked a lot better in the second half. You want to know why? And I've been as much as I'm a stickler for the run and a good defense, you can't have a good run without the other defense fearing that you're going to pass. And with this resurgence of the Eagles' passing game, it's going to make others respect A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts, and then open up lanes for Saquon Barkley. And it doesn't help the running game that Lane Johnson went down with a neck injury. I still don't think we know what's going on with him. Let's see. It was just a stinger, so it looks like he should be fine. It's unsure whether he will make week 4, but I'm assuming, knowing Lane Johnson, he would expect to play lane 4. And when we brought in Matt Pryor to be the offensive lineman at the right tackle position for Jalen Hurts in the first half, because that was basically the entire first half we brought in Matt Pryor, he looked absolutely abysmal. Like, he looked... There's something I want to say, and I'm not going to say it, but he looked horrible. And overall, once we brought in Fred Johnson, the veteran that came in last season for Jordan Mailata for a few games and played solid at a arguably harder position at left tackle, and then comes into this game and the entire offensive line stabilizes, especially for the pass game, it's a very good sign that we have a guy like Fred Johnson at a depth position where I don't really trust the rest of this offensive line depth. I mean, when we had Mekhi Becton and then Tyler Steen behind him, who could swing out to both right guard and left guard, that was good. Now we don't really have that kind of guy. And then on top of that, now having Fred Johnson, who can probably swing back from tackle to tackle, is actually pretty good. We have Brett Toth, who I actually do kind of trust. But besides that, I don't really trust any of these other guys that much besides Fred Johnson and Brett Toth at the depth position for our offensive line. So needless to say, players stepped up when it mattered most. Jalen Hurts stepped up and delivered good balls to A.J. Brown, who also stepped up when the lights were shining the brightest. And Jordan Davis had an amazing defensive day, and he's going to have more of that, especially this season on a contract year. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jordan Davis play up to this kind of level continuously through the rest of the season. Obviously, everybody talks about the block kick, and that is a miracle. Having 2 block kicks in the same game is close to impossible. I've never personally seen it done, and now seeing it, it's kind of funny. And if you really want me to get into the schematics of how we block the kick, the left guard, left of the long snapper, is a backup. I don't know his name. I'm not sure I will ever know his name, but he played, I think, he started the postseason game against the Eagles last season, I believe. But, yeah, they started him. He had no snaps, very few snaps before this game because their offensive lineman went down with an injury. Not sure what it was. I feel like it was an ankle. And then the special teams coordinator just put Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, our two biggest guys, up against that guard. He's not going to be able to handle both of them, and the long snapper isn't going to have enough reaction time to snap that ball, pull his head up, and then block a guy like Jordan Davis or Jalen Carter. So they were both able to spring past the left guard, and they were able to make a play when it mattered most. So that's me breaking down what really happened during that play. They just sandwiched their 2 biggest defensive linemen on the backup guard and told them to go make a play. And they did. And the Eagles won, and they continue to impress me this season so far when it comes to finding new ways to win. Alright, so let's go into some of these quick notes. Alright, so the start of the Jackson Dart era in New York begins this weekend. This could be fairly disastrous in my opinion due to the fact they are pitting a rookie up against a top 5 defense in the NFL right now, that being the Los Angeles Chargers defense. I feel like they are going to eat him alive. This could destroy his confidence if he goes out there and plays and does not do well, and it could destroy the rest of the team's confidence in him and as in the season as a whole. I think maybe riding with Russ, although he hasn't looked great, and we'll get into those matchups from this past weekend. Although he didn't look great, you should give him at least one more week to see if the week 2 vintage Russ that we saw would appear again. And if he did, then maybe this every other week thing might actually start to compile some wins. But if you throw a rookie out there at 0-3 and he gets eaten alive and he starts to struggle himself against defensive starters, because remember, he looked good against defensive backups, but that's not the same people you're going up against in the NFL right now. So I feel like the Giants are going to probably kill this kid's confidence, especially with how horrible that offensive line is. It's going to be fun to watch as an Eagles fan, and good luck, Jackson Dart. I wish you the best. Alright, so 7 teams won on a final possession of the game, whether it was a field goal or a blocked field goal. This is the most down-to-the-wire games in a single week in a long time. I think in like 20-plus years. Obviously, we will talk about them in depth, and in some capacity for some other ones during this episode. So just stay tuned. We'll cover all of those down-to-the-wire games there. Alright, so I have my top 3 NFL teams coming into week 4. Why not top 5? Well, because I just don't feel like it. And it's harder to kind of predict who's going to be where the more they expand it. At number 3, I have the Los Angeles Chargers. They are playing some physical football. Their offensive line looks solid. Justin Herbert looks like an MVP candidate and is delivering some jaw-dropping passes to win games even. And they have some, I believe, some easier opponents coming up, which will help them. They have Giants, Commanders, Dolphins coming up. So there's a possibility that they could end up like 5-1 or 6-0, depending on how they play their cards. I do feel like this year is the Chargers' year if they're going to step on the gas pedal, especially while the Chiefs are down 1-2 and are going to have to make up some ground, especially in their own division, whereas the Chargers are 3-0. It's going to be hard for the Chiefs to make up some ground, and if the Chargers continue to play the way that they're playing top-tier defense at a physical level, their offensive line is still pretty good, especially without Rashawn Slater, and Justin Herbert is playing within his ability and hitting his wide receivers that are surprisingly catching balls for him. So, overall, Chargers have kind of earned this number 3 spot. This hasn't been exactly given to them. All right. Number 2, I have the Buffalo Bills. The Bills have been playing some solid football. Yes, this Thursday night game was a little bit close against the Dolphins, but I'm not that concerned. You normally play your divisional rival, unless your name's the Jets, a little bit closer than you would any other team. So I'm not that concerned with how they played. Josh Allen continues to find a way to play at a MVP level, and he could be going for his second MVP. Obviously, that's TBD, and I don't think he's going to win MVP. But I still feel like... who did I say was going to... Hold on. I have this somewhere. I have Jalen Hurts winning MVP, and you'll get my reasoning here in a second here. But, yeah, I still feel like finding a way to win is going to be the formula for this Bills team. We just have to hope that that lasts an entire season, including playoffs. And especially with some interesting teams coming up. Where is their schedule at? Come on. All right, there we go. Especially playing teams like the Chiefs, Buccaneers, Texans, Steelers coming up in not too far of a distance. It's going to be interesting to see how this team rallies around each other and finds a way to win, especially behind Josh Allen, who, if he continues to play, will possibly even put his team into the number one slot of my top three teams. And obviously, at number one, we have my Philadelphia Eagles. We just talked about them for like 15 minutes, so we're going to let the Eagles rest a little bit, and we'll come back and talk about them at the end. Obviously, I still feel like Jalen Hurts, if he continues to play like this, day in, day out, he will be the MVP of the league. Just wait and see. I still think there's more to be seen by this Eagles offense, and I still feel like we are going to see an explosion of offensive power that we haven't seen in quite some time by a team. Alright, so that being that, let's hop into some of these more interesting games from this past week. We just touched on the Bills, but let's get into them real quick. The Buffalo Bills beat the Miami Dolphins 31-21. Josh Allen went 22 of 28, 213 yards, and 3 touchdowns through the air. On the ground, he had 4 carries for 25 yards. Their top rusher was James Cook with 108 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. Through the air, he also had 3 receptions for 10 yards. Dalton Kincaid was his top receiver this week, who had 5 receptions for 66 yards and a touchdown. Khalil Shakir was behind him with 4 receptions for 45 yards and a touchdown. Elijah Moore, 2 receptions for 30 yards. Tyrell Shavers with 2 receptions for 24 yards. Keon Coleman with 3 receptions for 20 yards. So the reason why I said all those names was because it shows that Josh Allen doesn't exactly have a number one target, but is finding ways to spread this ball out. The Bills got some consistent pressure on Tua, but were never able to get a sack. Rather, they were able to force an interception by Tua, which ultimately I think kind of sealed the game, if I remember correctly. But overall, it looked good for the Bills, and I'm not that concerned by the score. Tua Tagovailoa went 22 of 34, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Devon Achane was their top rusher with 12 carries for 26 yards. Ollie Gordon was the next closest with 9 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown. Tyreek Hill was their top receiver with 5 receptions for 49 yards and a touchdown, followed by Jalen Waddle with 5 receptions for 39 yards and a touchdown, and Devon Achane with 7 receptions for 29 yards. Their top defensive player was probably Tyrell Dodson, who had 11 total single tackles, and 1 sack as well. They were able to sack Josh, it looks like twice, so it looks like they were able to apply moderate pressure to Josh, but ultimately just couldn't find a way to win based off of their defensive performance. And if I'm Mike McDaniels, I see that Devon Achane got 62 yards off of 12 carries. I'm going to run this ball a lot more. It will open up that play action, but you have to pound the rock. I don't even care if you're behind. You have to run the ball. All right? Devon Achane could be a top 10 running back. He's a top 15 in my opinion, but he could be top 10 if he just got the ball more. So overall, it was kind of a poor loss by the Dolphins. They could have won it, but the Bills just found a way to win, and ultimately that's what they're going to continue to do, especially as one of my top 3 teams this week. Alright, this one we're going to buzz through quickly, mainly because I don't want to talk about one of these quarterbacks more than I have to. Minnesota Vikings beat the Cincinnati Bengals 48-10. Alright. We'll get into... Alright, let's get this over with. Carson Wentz went 14-20, 173 yards, and 2 touchdowns through the air. Their top rusher was Jordan Mason, who had himself a day with 16 carries for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. He continues to be a really solid back here, and I'm Not that surprised, honestly. If you are looking for a solid fantasy pickup, Jordan Mason might be the way. Uh, their top receiver, obviously Justin Jefferson, 5 receptions for 75 yards. Behind him was T.J. Hockenson with 5 receptions for 49 yards and a touchdown. And behind him was Jalen Nailor with 3 receptions for 37 yards. Their defense played very good. All right. And obviously the standout of that entire defense was Isaiah Rodgers, who had 2 defensive touchdowns, 2 forced fumbles, 1 interception, and it looks like 3 solo tackles. So the 1 interception was a pick 6. One of the forced fumbles was a scoop and score for a touchdown. So he forced his own fumble and then went and scored. And then another one was just a forced fumble that they recovered. Overall, this is one of the better defensive performances, apparently, that we've seen from a player ever since recording stats. So, really wish he was an Eagle right about now. But, yeah. Oh, well. Overall, looking at, we'll go over the Bengals quickly. They had 5 turnovers, I believe. 2 of which were interceptions by Jake. Well, no, I think it was. Yeah, it was 2 turnovers. Sorry. Look. 5 turnovers. Jesus. Jake Browning went 19 to 27, 140 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Samaje Perine had 4 carries for 21 yards. Tajay Brooks had 5 carries for 17 yards. Chase Brown had 10 carries for 3 yards, which is kind of weird. Though I thought he had more carries. Hold on. I could be wrong. I think I'm thinking of a different game here. No, that's that game. Alright, whatever. But I thought they gave Chase Brown the ball more, but I could be wrong. Defensive-wise, they couldn't do anything to stop the Vikings. I'm not even going to touch on their defense. Overall, Kevin O'Connell coached a good game with his backup quarterback, and his defense showed up due to Brian Flores pressuring the backup Jake Browning. So, overall, it was an amazing win by the Vikings, and if they continue this streak here, they might be a top-tier team in the NFC, especially with the Packers stumbling this week. But who knows what's going to happen over the next few weeks. So, nice win. Enjoy the win there, Minnesota. Cincinnati, we have some concerns now. More than we already did. Alright, the Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Houston Texans 17-10. Trevor Lawrence went 20 of 40, 222 yards, and 1 interception through the air. On the ground is where the Jaguars did most of their damage, with Travis Etienne, having 16 carries for 56 yards and 1 touchdown. Brandon Strange was their top receiver with 6 receptions for 61 yards. Brian Thomas Jr. had 2 receptions for 55 yards. Parker Washington had 4 receptions for 34 yards, and Travis Hunter had 1 reception for 61 yards. Defensively, they were able to pick off C.J. Stroud twice and were able to apply a little bit of pressure to him, but nothing like crazy. We do have some concerns for Brian Thomas Jr. He seems like he cannot catch the ball over the middle of the field, which is kind of needed for a wide receiver to be able to use his hands. I can't tell whether it's their offensive coordinator not scheming him up right, or whether it's him just having a lackluster play every time he steps onto the field. The Texans, C.J. Stroud went 25 of 38, 204 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Nick Chubb had 9 carries for 38 yards. Nico Collins was their top receiver, with 8 receptions for 104 yards and 1 touchdown. Dalton Schultz, right behind him, he was the next closest with 5 receptions for 39 yards. And Christian Kirk with 3 receptions for 25 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to get after Trevor Lawrence, it looks like, twice, and were able to force an interception by Trevor Lawrence. But the bigger story really coming out of the Texans is how they released safety C.J. Gardner-Johnson after multiple altercations in the locker room, showing why the Eagles most likely got rid of him, and that's why I just haven't brought him up as a possibility for the Eagles to bring back this week. So, yeah. Ultimately, Texans are 0-3. This should be fairly concerning. They need to run the ball more. They're putting way too much pressure on C.J. Stroud, especially with such a bad offensive line. And although C.J. Stroud can deliver, he's just not finding a way to win. And ultimately, I think he threw a game-sealing interception, actually. So, he actually might have hurt their chances even more than he helped with all the passing yards that he had. Alright, next up we have the Colts versus Titans. Let's go over this one quick. The Indianapolis Colts beat the Tennessee Titans 41-20. Looking at the stats here, Daniel Jones went 18 of 25, 228 yards, and 1 touchdown through the air. On the ground, he had 4 carries for 27 yards. Jonathan Taylor, pretty big day for him. Again, he had 17 carries for 102 yards and 3 touchdowns. If he continues this trend, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the top rusher in the NFL this season, especially with the way Saquon's playing this season, especially the way that all the defenses are catering themselves towards Saquon. Jonathan Taylor, as of right now, seems to be the better back in the NFL, especially over obviously, like I just said, Saquon, Derrick Henry, and Jahmyr Gibbs as well. So, pretty good outing for Jonathan Taylor. Michael Pittman Jr. was their top receiver with 6 receptions for 73 yards and a touchdown. Alec Pierce had 4 receptions for 67 yards, and Tyler Warren had 3 receptions for 38 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to sack Cam Ward, it looks like, 4 or 5 times, and forced 1 interception by the rookie quarterback as well. Speaking of the rookie phenom, we have Cam Ward, who, oh boy, he went 23 of 38, 219 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception through the air. On the ground, their top rusher was Tony Pollard with 16 carries for 45 yards and 1 touchdown. Their top receiver was Chisholm Okonkwo with 5 receptions for 66 yards. Alec Aminor with 4 receptions for 38 yards and 1 touchdown. Tyler Lockett with 4 receptions for 37 yards. Yeah, this was a kind of a rough day for the Titans, and it kind of proves to me that Brian Callahan is the problem. He did not manage the clock pretty well, so it's going to be a long season for Titans fans. I still feel like Brian Callahan could get fired at the end of the season, but again, Colts, the way that Daniel Jones is playing, he might be saving Shane Steichen's job, so it's just to be determined if they can keep this up. And maybe, just maybe, if they continue to keep their foot on the pedal, they might sneak into my top 3 or top 5 if I decide to expand it in the future. Alright, next up we have the Washington Commanders beat the Las Vegas Raiders 41-24. The Commanders had, obviously, Jaden Daniels was injured, so Marcus Mariota was their starting quarterback. He went 15 of 21, 207 yards and 1 touchdown through the air. On the ground, he also had 6 carries for 40 yards and 1 touchdown. Jeremy McNichols was their top rusher with 4 carries for 78 yards and 1 touchdown. Their top receivers was Terry McLaurin with 3 receptions for 74 yards, Luke McCaffrey with 3 receptions for 56 yards and a touchdown, and Zach Ertz with 3 receptions for 38 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to get after the quarterback quite a few times, and it looks like 5 or 6, and they were just able to apply consistent pressure to Geno Smith in order to make him feel off-kilter. Speaking of Geno Smith, he went 19 to 29, 289 yards, and 3 touchdowns. You would think with a stat line like that, you would be able to win. Rushing wise, their top rusher was Ashton Jeanty with 17 carries for 63 yards. Their top receiver was Trey Tucker with 8 receptions for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns. Oh, that's not good if you're one receiver scoring all the touchdowns. Jacoby Myers was the next highest receiver with 3 receptions for 63 yards, followed by Brock Bowers with 4 receptions for 38 yards. Defensive-wise, they were not able to stop a cool breeze, so they were barely able to stop Marcus Mariota. They got 1 sack on Mariota, and that's it. And that was by Mad Max Crosby. So, Commanders find a way to win without their franchise guy, especially after an embarrassing loss on Thursday Night Football in Week 2. And they come out and they spank the Raiders. You would think with Geno Smith playing as close to perfect ball as he could, at least statistically, I didn't watch the game, but as statistically as perfect as possible, you guys would come out with a win, and yet your defense fell flat and allowed the Commanders with their backup quarterback to put up 41 points on you guys. So, ultimately, this is kind of a bad sign, but it's more of a wait and see how you guys kind of turn out over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Next up, we have probably the biggest upset of the entire weekend. The Carolina Panthers beat the Atlanta Falcons 30-0. I mean, Bryce Young went 16 of 24, 121 yards through the air. On the ground, he had 2 carries for 8 yards and 1 touchdown. Their top rusher was Chuba Hubbard with 17 carries for 73 yards, and Rico Dowell had 10 carries for 30 yards and 1 touchdown. Terrell McMillan had 3 receptions for 48 yards, followed by Tommy Tremble with 2 receptions for 16 yards. Bryson Tyramain had 2 receptions for 15 yards, and Jatavion Sanders had 2 receptions for 11 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to intercept Michael Penix twice and weren't able to really apply consistent pressure. They didn't get a single sack. So I highly doubt that their defensive line played that well for Michael Penix Jr. to throw an interception. Looking at the stats here, Michael Penix Jr., 18 for 36, 172 yards, and 2 interceptions. Kirk Cousins went 5 for 7, 29 yards. I think he came in at the end, so we'll see how that happens, but I doubt that he'll start next week. Bijan Robinson had 13 carries for 72 yards, and Nathan Carter was behind him with 7 carries for 46 yards. Drake London had 5 receptions for 55 yards. Darnell Mooney had 4 receptions for 44 yards. Bijan Robinson had 5 receptions for 39 yards. And Kyle Pitts had 4 receptions for 39 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to get after the quarterback a few times. They were able to sack Bryce Young or Andy Dalton, whoever came in, twice. So they're able to apply a little bit of pressure, but just not enough to pin the Panthers deep in their own territory to force a punt and then have decent field position. I don't think the Falcons passed the 45-yard line of the Panthers at least once. And it's still funny, no Falcons receiver, like wide receiver or tight end, has a passing touchdown on the season. And it's been the Bijan Robinson show, but if you only give him 13 carries, it can't really be his show. This is very concerning for the Falcons, in my opinion. They've fallen flat, I think, twice in a row now, if I'm not mistaken. No. They played very well against the Vikings. I forgot about that matchup. And then they fell flat against the Buccaneers in Week 1, just barely. And this is a pretty bad look for the Falcons, in my opinion. Panthers, don't get your hopes up because the Falcons seem kind of demoralized and just on ready for whatever you guys were willing to throw at you. And you guys, I think, have a rough schedule coming up. Yeah, you guys have Patriots, Dolphins, Cowboys. That's going to be a rough stretch for you guys. And you might be able to pull off the win against the Patriots. That would be an upset. You definitely could win against the Dolphins. You're not winning against the Cowboys unless you guys play how the Bears did this weekend. And the rest of your schedule is not particularly easy as well. So that is slightly concerning to me that they haven't at least gotten 2 wins at this point. But a 30-0 win over a division rival, I guess that can be kind of excused away as an excuse for now. All right, Steelers, Patriots. This one was kind of a snooze fest. Patriots had 5 turnovers. We'll get to that in a second. But looking at how the Steelers played, Aaron Rodgers went 16 of 23, 139 yards, and 2 touchdowns with 1 interception as well. On the ground, their top rusher was Jaylen Warren with 18 carries for 47 yards. Receiving-wise, their top receiver was Jaylen Warren again with 5 receptions for 34 yards. Calvin Austin was right behind him with 3 receptions for 34 yards and a touchdown. And DK Metcalf was right behind him with 3 receptions for 32 yards and a touchdown. Defensive-wise, they were able to force several fumbles and were able to pick off Drake May at least once. Overall, I'm slightly concerned about how poorly that the passing offense has played out, but also how poorly that the run offense has played out. To me right now, the Steelers aren't like a team that if you pin them up against a top 10 team in the NFL, I don't think they're going to win. And as much as I would love to see Aaron Rodgers ball out every single week, I know that's not possible. So it's on the run game to take that pressure off of Rodgers' arm. And if you can do that, you can win. And the defense, yes, they forced 5 turnovers. But they still allowed 14 points. And that is slightly concerning by a a second-year quarterback who already turned the ball over 5 times. Or at least 4. So, yeah, speaking of turnovers, Drake May went 28 of 37, 268 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. On the ground, he was their top rusher with 7 carries for 45 yards, followed by Travion Henderson, who had 11 carries for 28 yards. Hunter Henry was their top receiver with 8 receptions for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns, followed by Ramondre Stevenson with 3 receptions for 38 yards. Kayshon Boutte was right behind him with 2 receptions for 28 yards, followed by Austin Hooper, who also had 2 receptions for 28 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to not get after the quarterback whatsoever, but they were able to force a interception of Aaron Rodgers. So, I guess that's a win, but when you guys turn over the ball 5 times on offense, is it really a win? Let's be honest here. Overall, Steelers need to see more out of them. Patriots, this is a slightly concerning loss, and we're going to see how you guys have to rebound against your opponent this week, that being the Carolina Panthers. All right, next up we have the Packers. We have the Cleveland Browns upsetting the Green Bay Packers 13-10. The Browns, looking at their stat sheet, it's not anything special. Joe Flacco went 21 of 36, 104 yards, and 1 interception through the air. Quinshon Judkins actually has looked pretty solid. He has 18 carries for 94 yards, and 1 touchdown. David Njoku was their top receiver with 5 receptions for 40 yards. Cedric Tillman was right behind him with 3 receptions for 26 yards. Harold Fanning Jr. was right behind him with 3 receptions for 25 yards. And Jerry Jeudy was right behind him with 1 reception for 17 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to get a back-breaking interception by Jordan Love, which set up a touchdown drive for Joe Flacco. and they were able to sack the quarterback several times. It looks like 4 or 5. So they really put Jordan Love under some duress, and that ultimately helped win them the game. Jordan Love, 18 of 25, 183 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Josh Jacobs, 16 carries for 30 yards on the ground. Matthew Golden was their top receiver finally, with 4 receptions for 52 yards. Josh Jacobs was right behind him with 5 receptions for 44 yards. Tucker Kraft, 3 receptions for 29 yards. And Romeo Doubs with 2 receptions for 25 yards. They were able to intercept Joe Flacco, yes, and they were able to apply some pressure to him as well. But it just wasn't enough to get the Packers over the hump and get the win, especially coming off a win against the Commanders like they did on Thursday Night Football. This is slightly disheartening to see for many Packers fans. Obviously, the Browns are known to not be a good team, but come out and upset top-tier teams. They did it last season with the Ravens. They did it this season with the Packers. Who else is on their docket to do it for? Who knows? But we know that the Packers now have fallen victim to the poop brown uniforms, the all-brown uniforms by the Cleveland Browns. And, Jordan Love looked mediocre at best, in my opinion, from the clips that I've seen. And the Browns defense really balled out and won this game for the team. So, Packers need to get your head screwed on straight, and then we can kind of just reset and keep moving forward. Browns, good win. Maybe try to stockpile some of these wins early on. All right, Jets Buccaneers. This is one of the games that had a blocked field goal return for a touchdown, only for Baker Mayfield to have a game-winning drive and Chase McLaughlin to kick the field goal to seal the win for the Buccaneers. Looking at their raw stats, Baker Mayfield, 19 of 29, 233 yards, and 1 touchdown through the air. Bucky Irving had 25 carries for 66 yards on the ground. Baker Mayfield himself had 4 carries for 44 yards. Receiving, their top receiver was Emeka Mbuka with 6 receptions for 85 yards, followed by Sterling Shepard with 4 receptions for 80 yards. Mike Evans had 4 receptions for 33 yards and a touchdown, and Bucky Irving had 4 receptions for 33 yards. They were able to get after the quarterback several times, like 4 sacks, so they were able to apply consistent pressure to Tyrod Taylor and was able to get 1 interception off of the backup quarterback, Tyrod Taylor. Mike Evans did go out with a hamstring injury, and he will miss several weeks. Both their starting left and right tackle are out, so we're going to see when they get back. Their left tackle could be back as soon as this weekend, and Chris Godwin, who's been out for the season so far, could also be back as soon as this weekend. And Emeka Mbuka also was dealing with some groin injury, but it doesn't seem like it will affect him too much. Jets. Tough loss, guys. There's been a couple of tough losses here, but Tyrod Taylor, 26 of 36, 197 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Tyrod was also their lead rusher with 8 carries for 48 yards, followed by Braylon Allen with 6 carries for 30 yards, followed by Breece Hall with 9 carries for 21 yards. Receiving-wise, Garrett Wilson, top receiver, 10 receptions for 84 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Johnson was the next closest with 2 receptions for 32 yards. Defensive-wise, they were not able to apply consistent enough pressure, especially against backup tackles on the offensive line. So that is slightly concerning that they were not able to apply much pressure at all, and they just weren't able to get any turnovers. I know Sauce Gardner went down during the game. I don't know his timeline, but I know they didn't have him for most of the game anyway, so maybe that did feed into the lackluster defensive performance, but their defense shouldn't have to rely on one person. I would love to see more out of the more out of the rushing game. We can't have Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor being our top rushers every week. And we need to see Breece Hall take that next step forward if he's going to be a top-tier running back in this league. Garrett Wilson is all by himself. They need to get another wide receiver, and that's going to be a concern that they tackle probably in the offseason and probably in the draft. So, yeah, it's slightly concerning that it's only Garrett Wilson catching balls and that their defensive line can't continuously get pressure on backup left and right tackles, and that their lead rusher was their quarterback for like the past few weeks. So, Jets, you guys have some places that you guys need to clean up, but you guys look like a fiery football team, and I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season we see you guys closer to a winning record than a losing record. Buccaneers, keep finding ways to win, just not next week against my Birds. That's all I ask. Alright, Broncos-Chargers, another tight AFC West matchup here. The Chargers beat the Broncos 23-20. Came down to a game-winning field goal. Chargers, Justin Herbert went 28 of 47, 300 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception through the air. Their top rusher was Omarion Hampton with 19 carries for 70 yards and 1 touchdown. Najee Harris, though, had 6 carries for 28 yards, and he looked like the better running back early on. Well, then he tore his Achilles, and he will now be out for the rest of the season. So sorry, Najee Harris, but it's now Omarion Hampton time. Let's see Hampton take over in that starting running back role. Quentin Johnston was their top receiver with 6 receptions for 89 yards, followed by Keenan Allen with 7 receptions for 65 yards and 1 touchdown. Ladd McConkey has had a quiet season so far. He has 4 receptions for 41 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to sack the quarterback a couple of times, apply consistent pressure to Bo Nix, and force some overthrows by Bo Nix, especially on deep passes. Speaking of him, he went 14-25, 153 yards and 1 touchdown through the air. Rushing, their top rusher was J.K. Dobbins, and he had a pretty good game himself with 11 carries for 83 yards and 1 touchdown. Bo Nix also had 8 carries for 33 yards. Receiving-wise, their top receiver was Courtland Sutton, and it wasn't even close by their next one. Courtland Sutton had 6 receptions for 118 yards and 1 touchdown. R.J. Harvey had 3 receptions for 41 yards. And Lucas Kroll had 1 reception for 9 yards. So that shows you the lack of depth and lack of productivity from this Broncos wide receiver room. Defensive-wise, they were able to sack the quarterback and they were able to sack Justin Herbert 5 times and apply consistent pressure to him. They were able to force 1 interception, but they just couldn't get a stop when it mattered most. And the Chargers, while Justin Herbert led the Chargers on a game-winning drive, and they kicked the field goal by Dicker the kicker, and ultimately send the Broncos to 1-2 and the Chargers to 3-0. All right, Broncos, tough losses the past 2 weeks. You guys have to rebound against a banged-up Bengals team. It's going to be difficult, especially with their passing attack, but especially coming off a loss like that against the Vikings, I still feel like you guys might be able to easily win that game against the Bengals. Chargers, you guys are 3-0 for the first time in a long time, and Justin Herbert looks like a MVP candidate. We talked about this earlier in the episode, but I'm just recapping. You guys are 3-0 in your division. You guys have had 3 straight division matchups, and you guys are 3-0 in your division. You guys have the Giants coming up, Commanders, and Dolphins. You guys can at least go 2-1 in that stretch, and at least put yourself at 5-1, and force the Chiefs to play some catch-up there. So, overall, great game by the Chargers and Broncos. Saints Seahawks, let's cover this quickly. Seahawks won 44-13. Sam Darnold went 14-18, 218 yards and 2 touchdowns. They also brought in Drew Lock eventually, who went 2 for 3 for 15 yards. Kenneth Walker had 16 carries for 38 yards and 2 touchdowns. You would have liked to see him generate more yards, especially with that many carries. So you got to keep an eye on how many yards he's really generating over the next 2 weeks. Jackson Smith and Jigba had 5 receptions for 96 yards and 1 touchdown, followed by Troy Horton with 3 receptions for 32 yards and a touchdown, followed by Cooper Kupp with 2 receptions for 31 yards. Defensive-wise, they had a field day. They were able to sack the quarterback at least 4 to 5 times, and they were able to intercept Spencer Rattler at least once. Speaking of Spencer Rattler, he went 28 of 38, or 28 of 39, 218 yards and 1 touchdown to 1 interception. Tyler Shuck also came in at some point apparently, but he went 0 for 2. Alvin Kamara was their top rusher with 18 carries for 42 yards. Chris Olave was their top receiver with 10 receptions for 57 yards, followed by Juwan Johnson with 6 receptions for 51 yards, followed by Rashid Shaheed with 4 receptions for 42 yards. Defensive-wise, they could do nothing against this entire Seahawks offense, and it kind of carved them up. Good luck, Saints. This is the Saints team I was expecting to show up every single week, so at least you guys got 2 solid weeks in before the Shakespearean travesty that we call football in the Bayou showed up. All right, Bears Cowboys. The Chicago Bears upset the Dallas Cowboys 31-14. Caleb Williams looked like a top-tier quarterback. He went 19 of 28, 298 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. On the ground, he also had 5 carries for 12 yards. Their top rusher was DeAndre Swift, who had 13 carries for 33 yards. Receiving-wise, their top receiver was Luther Burden, the third, with 3 receptions for 101 yards and 1 touchdown. Rome Odunze was their next highest receiver with 3 receptions for 62 yards and a touchdown. And next closest one was DeAndre Swift with 3 receptions for 45 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to force, I think, 2 fumbles and forced Dak to throw 3 interceptions. My apologies. I believe 2 were by Dak, and 1 was by Joe Milton as well. So and this defense was able to apply consistent pressure to Dak as well. So they were able to kind of dismantle this Dallas team up in Soldier Field. Dak Prescott went 31 of 40, 251, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Eventually got benched for Joe Milton, who came in, went 3 for 5, 41 yards and 1 interception. Javonte Williams had 10 carries for 76 yards, but also had a fumble as well. Miles Sanders went 9 for 41 on the ground, and nobody else of note was really there. Jake Ferguson was their top receiver, and of course he was going up against me in fantasy, and he helped win the other guy win. He had 13 receptions for 82 yards, followed by George Pickens with 5 receptions for 68 yards and 1 touchdown, followed by Kevontae Turpin with 2 receptions for 64 yards. CeeDee Lamb went down with a high ankle sprain. He got rolled up on during a play where they kind of acted like he was a running back, which was kind of weird. He got rolled up on, and he will miss at least 3 to 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain. So we'll see how that shifts Dallas's offensive mentality on how and who they deliver the ball to. Defensive-wise, they could not stop this Bears offense and did not get a single sack or consistently pressure the quarterback as well. Looking at the big picture, normally I would complain about how many rushing yards that the Bears would have. Well, they completely diced up this Cowboys defense out in the open, and it was kind of fun to watch. So I hope to see it again. this Cowboys defense get dissected by their next opponent, the Green Bay Packers. So, yeah. Bears, great win. Start finding ways to win, okay? Wins like this mean a lot, and you guys looked like a top-tier offense in the league. Now you guys got to show it again. Cardinals, 49ers. This one was kind of a bloodbath, all right? You had two main pieces of both teams go down with season-ending injuries in this game. But let's talk about the 49ers first. Mac Jones went 27 of 41, 284 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. He also led a game-winning drive that set up Eddie Piñeiro's game-winning field goal. Christian McCaffrey had 17 carries for 52 yards, followed by Brian Robinson Jr. with 2 carries for 22 yards. Ricky Pearsall was the top receiver with 8 receptions for 117 yards, followed by Christian McCaffrey with 10 receptions for 88 yards. And the next closest was Kendrick Bourne with 4 receptions for 38 yards. This defense was not that great. They were able to sack the quarterback once, but they were not able to force any turnovers and were not able to apply pressure consistently to the quarterback. Nick Bosa went down with a season-ending injury. I believe it was an Achilles tear. And unfortunately, nobody else on this defense has really stepped up besides him. So that is slightly concerning. But they kind of traded an eye for an eye, and we'll talk about that in a second here. Kyler Murray went 22 of 38 or 35, 159 yards and 1 touchdown. Trey Benson was their top rusher with 10 carries for 42 yards, followed by Kyler Murray with 6 carries for 37 yards. James Conner had 9 carries for 22 yards, but he went down with a season-ending injury. I believe it was an ACL. He had to get carted off the field, and it was fairly upsetting to watch. Obviously, they traded an eye for an eye, and the 49ers lost a key defensive player, while the Cardinals lost a key offensive player. And that could be, I'm not going to say that could be the end of their careers, but for James Conner, there's a high possibility that he's not coming back from this. And looking at Nick Bosa, he hasn't been on the field consistently enough for the 49ers for them to consider keeping him around long term. Maybe they end up shopping him. Who knows? Marvin Harrison Jr. led the reception charge here. He had 3 receptions for 44 yards, followed by Trey McBride with 5 receptions for 43 yards and a touchdown, followed by Zay Jones with 2 receptions for 25 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to force 1 interception and were able to apply a little bit of pressure to Mac Jones, just not enough to win the game and force any other turnovers by the backup quarterback. And that is going to be the story of this week, probably. Teams not applying enough pressure to the quarterback to win these tight games. 49ers now sitting at 3-0, atop of the NFC West. Cardinals sitting at 2-1. They're not out of the game yet. I still feel like they have a solid chance of winning. And 49ers, good luck. You guys have kind of a easy schedule, so once you guys actually play some real teams, we'll see how you guys play. Rumors that Brock Purdy is slightly jealous of what Mac Jones is doing, so there is a possibility that he could come back this week to play. It's still up in the air. I think it's a game-time decision, but I wouldn't count Brock Purdy out to come back and play this week against whoever they play. Chiefs-Giants, I've never hated watching a football game more. Looking at the stat score, I mean, the Chiefs beat the Giants 22-9, but it was realistically, they won it like 13-9. Patrick Mahomes went 22 of 37, 224 yards, and one touchdown through the air. Their top rusher was Isaiah Pacheco with 10 carries for 45 yards, followed by Kareem Hunt with 10 carries for 34 yards and a touchdown. Their top receiver was Tyquan Thornton with 5 receptions for 71 yards and a touchdown. followed by Juju Smith-Schuster with 4 receptions for 55 yards, Hollywood Brown with 4 receptions for 42 yards, and Travis Kelce with 4 receptions for 26 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to intercept Russ twice, and they were able to sack the quarterback twice as well. Not able to apply too much pressure against a bad offensive line, which is not a good sign, in my opinion. Jesus. All right. Russ, he went 18 of 32, 160 yards, and 2 interceptions. Both of which were on deep passes, just looking for a receiver that was already blanketed down the field. Cam Scadaboo had himself a pretty good game, better than what the stats show here. He had 10 carries for 60 yards and 1 touchdown. On the ground, through the air, he was their top receiver with 6 receptions for 61 yards. Tyrone Tracy was right behind him in the rushing game with 7 carries for 29 yards. Russ behind him with 5 carries for 27 yards. Receiving, Cam, I just went over, he was the lead receiver with 6 receptions for 61 yards, followed by Darius Slayton with 4 receptions for 30 yards. Wan'Dale Robinson had 1 reception for 26 yards, and Malik Neighbor had 2 receptions for 13 yards. Defensively, they were able to apply more pressure than the stats actually showed. They only got 1 sack on Mahomes, but they looked like they were close to getting several. They just were like a split second behind every time to get after that quarterback. Overall, sloppy win by the Chiefs, but a win's a win at the end of the day, so I got to give it to them. They play the Ravens, who are also 1-2. That's going to be a fun game to watch, me personally. And Giants, best of luck, I guess. All right, last up here on this slate, we had the Lions beating the Baltimore Ravens 38-30. Jared Goff went 20 of 28, 202 yards and 1 touchdown. Rushing, David Montgomery had 12 carries for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns, followed by Jahmyr Gibbs with 22 carries for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 7 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown, followed by Jameis Williams with 2 receptions for 43 yards, and Sam Laporta with 4 receptions for 33 yards. Defensive-wise, they were able to sack Lamar 6 times, and they were able to force a fumble by Derrick Henry as well late in the game to seal the victory. Speaking of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, Lamar went 21 of 27, 288 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. He also had 7 carries for 35 yards on the ground. Derrick Henry had a good start to his game. He had 12 carries for 50 yards and a touchdown. It was as he went on later and later in the game, especially late in the fourth quarter, the Lions forced a fumble by Derrick Henry, and ultimately he had a temper tantrum on the sideline. Receiving-wise, their top receiver was Mark Andrews with 6 receptions for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns, followed by Rashad Bateman with 5 receptions for 63 yards and a touchdown, and then Justice Hill with 3 receptions for 45 yards. Defensive-wise, they were not really able to stop this Lions offense too often, especially in the run game. David Montgomery ran all over this defense as much as possible, and he came in late in the game. It's not like he was a starting back. That was Jahmyr Gibbs, but they just weren't ready to adjust to the new running back style. And this Lions offense looks like the Lions offense of old. They look like the Ben Johnson high-flying offense, and then run the ball down your throat and use a explosive run game as well. Ravens, slightly concerning. They fall to 1-2. They play the Chiefs next, so one of those 2 top-tier teams, arguably, could fall to 1-3 on the season. And for the Ravens' sake, because of how tight the AFC North can be, I hope that it's not them. That's all I'm going to say. Good win by the Lions. It's nice to see that they're finding their footing, and now I can actually start to believe in the Lions once again. Alright, so let's go over this weekend's games pretty quickly. I know this is a little bit more of an extended episode, so let's hop right into it, shall we? On Thursday Night Football, we have the Seattle Seahawks playing the Arizona Cardinals. Give me the Seahawks. They just diced up this Saints defense pretty well, and they look pretty explosive right now. It's hard to go against them, and that would have the Seahawks advancing on the season to 6-1, whereas the Cardinals fall to 2-2. Then we got our first international game of the year. The Pittsburgh Steelers play the Minnesota Vikings in Dublin, Ireland. I have the Steelers coming away with this win. I just think that this defense is going to find a way to win, especially against a quarterback like Carson Wentz. And they're going to find a way to stifle KOC's offense. It's just how much can this Steelers offense perform when it matters most. And I feel like Aaron Rodgers will find a way to win ultimately, and will find a way to put them on top. Commanders, Falcons, give me the Commanders. Commanders, even with their backup quarterback, looked pretty explosive, and the Falcons still look pretty flat right now. I wouldn't be completely surprised if the Falcons found some way to win the game, but to me, it's just the Commanders are going to win this game pretty handily because they are just the better overall team. Bills, Saints, the money line is minus 2,000 Bills. So if you want to put like maybe $25 on the Saints, you guys could get a crazy payout. But probably take the Bills if you want to be honest. Take the Buffalo Bills. I'm not even going to explain that one. Browns, Lions. I have the Lions coming away with the win here. I think they find a way to blow past this pretty top-tier defense and find a way to be explosive and eliminate Myles Garrett from the game. I also think this Detroit defense steps up and gets several sacks on Joe Flacco to the point where they decide to throw Dillon Gabriel into the game. So we'll have to wait and see, but I still feel like this Lions team is pretty stellar, even against a top-tier Cleveland defense. Patriots, Panthers. I'm going to go with the Patriots here because I feel like they're going to find a way to out-physical this Panthers team, and they're just going to find a way to win as long as they don't turn the ball over. This Panthers defensive line has not been able to apply consistent enough pressure to quarterbacks, which is slightly concerning, and I think it's a tight game, but ultimately Drake May and mainly Mike Vrabel, though, finds a way to win the game. Chargers, Giants. Give me the Chargers. The Chargers are going to go up to New York, probably waffle stomp Jackson Dart's homecoming up at the Meadowlands, and I think they just kill this rookie like close to like a blowout, close to like 45 to like 10. So yeah, they're going to out physical the Giants at every step of the way, and ultimately will find a way to win. The Eagles versus the Bucks. Loser of this will fall to 3-1. Winner will go to 4-0 and have the tiebreaker later in the season if that comes into play. I think the Eagles finally exercise their demons. I think they find a way to win down in Tampa. They're going down a day early to get adjusted to the heat, and which really killed them during the last matchup last year. And last year they didn't have their two top-tier wide receivers, and going into this week they will. Buccaneers are a little bit banged up. Emeka Mbuka. Sorry, Jesus. I was trying to remember if that was actually their receiver. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays, but still is slightly injured. Tristan Wirfs is going to try to come back, but I'm not sure whether he'll be able to make it back, meaning that both their left tackle and right tackle will be their backups again. Mike Evans is going to be out for several weeks with a hamstring, and Chris Godwin could come back, but in a limited capacity. So I think there's some injuries on the defense too, but they're not as major as the ones that I just listed. I feel like this Eagles team finds a way to just mow over this Buccaneers team and win like 38-22. Texans, Titans. Texans finally get their first win, in my opinion. If the Titans upset the Texans, that's going to be wild. And we're going to have some talks about changes at the coordinator positions. But I think the Texans find their first win here against a pitiful defensive division rival, and ultimately get C.J. Stroud's first win of the season. Colts-Rams. I think the Rams will find a way to bounce back, though, you know what, screw it. I've been betting against the Colts for a little bit now. Give me the Indianapolis Colts to upset the Los Angeles Rams and ultimately find a way to win in the waning moments of the game off of a stellar MVP performance by Daniel Jones again. And it will be a rough loss, another rough loss for the Rams. Jaguars, 49ers. Part of me wants to say to go Jaguars, but in my mind, I'm going to go with the 49ers here. I feel like they're the more complete team, and I feel like I have a lot more question marks about Jacksonville than I do for the San Francisco. Doesn't mean I don't have any. I still have a lot for San Francisco. I just have a lot more for the Jaguars as of right now. We have Ravens-Chiefs. Give me the Ravens. I think this defense steps up this week and finds a way to win, to propel them to 2-0. Lamar plays within his own game. He doesn't play like superhero ball, and he ultimately gets a win over Patty Mahomes in the regular season. We have Bears-Raiders. Give me the Bears. I just feel better about their offense, where they're at this point compared to the first 2 weeks, and I feel like that this stale Raiders defense is going to find a way to fail the team. And Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams go into the black hole and find themselves a win in Las Vegas. Packers-Cowboys, give me the Packers. Cowboys have looked pretty bad over the last 3 weeks, even with their one win against the Giants, which looks a lot worse after this past weekend's game. And how those Giants played. Give me the Packers. I think Micah gets like 2 to 3 sacks on Dak Prescott, and that somebody else from Dallas gets injured. Somebody else that's important as well. So I think the Packers just mow over the Cowboys in Micah's return to Jerry World. We have 2 Monday Night Football games. We have Jets-Dolphins. Give me the Jets. I just think they're going to find a way to win, and this Dolphins team has not found a way to be winners yet, and I just feel like the Jets can out-physical this team every step of the way. So give me the Jets to upset the Dolphins down in Miami. Lastly, we have the Bengals versus the Broncos. I'm going to take the Broncos here. Bengals are a shell of themselves right now, and this Broncos defense I feel like will do even worse things to this Bengals offense than this Vikings defense did this past weekend. So, give me the Broncos to probably decimate the Bengals this weekend. Alright, so that's it for this episode of the Flying with the Fly podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. And it's been a crazy week in football. Let's hope for another crazy weekend in football again. I've been your host, Matt. And remember, please leave a like and subscribe down below. Follow us on X for any updates. And with all that out of the way, remember, go Birds.